And I think it's pretty clear that if you read a book like this, General Powell is still a source of inspiration, as are the rest of these incredibly brave men. And also a source of leadership lessons of what to do and what not to do. And it's also an incredible reminder of that heavy burden of command. And the fact of the matter is, when you lead, you own every decision and every action, not only of yourself, but of your men. And with that burden, you owe it to them to be as well prepared, to be as tactically sound, and to be as physically and mentally strong as you can possibly be. And that goes for any leadership position. When you are a leader, be as prepared as you possibly can. And then you go out and you lead with courage, and you lead with resolution, and you lead with boldness. Boldness like Jeffrey Powell and the officers and the men of the 156th Parachute Battalion. Pretty amazing book that, like I said, I got this book 6 days ago or something. Mm-hmm. Somebody just sent it to me, and I gave it the little test when I kind of open books up, because people send me a lot of books.
Sure.
And I gave it the test. I open up, I read a couple sections, and immediately, I'll open to a book in 4 or 5 different places to see what it reads like. And this, within the first page that I read, I said, "Oh, it looks like we have a winner here. This one's going to be on the podcast," because it's just impactful. And the account now, in the back of the book, he talks about the individuals, and I'll just read some of them off here. The brigadier was General John Hackett. The colonel was Dickie DeVoe of the Grenadier Guards. His fellow grenadier was Sergeant Major Dennis Gay. His Batman, the guy that he talks about, Harrison, throughout the book, the guy that's there from the beginning to the end, always by his side, that was actually a guy named Fred Tracy. The guy named David Unwin in the book is the character in the book. The real guy was named Michael Page, who had been Powell's best man, and whose son, Jeffrey, born posthumously, had another son named Michael. And Luke Tyler and Sergeant Weiner and Jones and John Simmons, these were all real people. So, this is another guy that very similar to Major John Glover, who said he had a hard time writing about himself in the first person. I did this and I did that. And that's the same thing that Powell said. He had a hard time writing until he just made it about some other, made some other character in his head and wrote from that perspective. But, man, you definitely, this book, like I said, I read, 5% of it. It's not a huge book, though, actually. Mm-hmm. It's only a couple 100 pages long, and it's a very fast read.
Did you find it to give you this weird, stressful feeling reading, though?
Absolutely.
Like, listening to it is like just more stressful.
No, it is stressed. It is. And I was debating when to tell you and when to tell everyone that this is not a good, that this isn't a good story, right? That this isn't a positive thing. And I kind of just, I don't know when I actually said that, hey, they're not going to win. I mean, I said that the Operation Market Garden was a failure, but what does that really look like? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
you don't
yeah.
know what that looks like until you get reading this book.
Yeah.
And then you start to feel what it feels like. And absolutely. And when you read the whole book, man, it is just coming apart. It's just like little misfortune. And they're just coming and they don't stop. They just don't stop.
Mm-hmm.
It's a nightmare scenario. And and there's tons of great lessons learned. It's so amazing because I never read this book before. I just got it.
Yeah.
But it's amazing. Cover and move.
Yeah.
Decentralized command.
Yeah. Even
Prioritize and execute.
at that part when you're
Keeping it simple, right? Everything that we learned, I should have learned this years ago.
yeah.
And when I think about, I was, you look back at your life, right? And you say to yourself, what could I have done better? What could I do different? And, everyone in the SEAL teams, like basically you get one shot at each job. Other than just being a shooter in a platoon, that you can do 3 or 4 times if you're lucky.
Sure.
But then once you get into a leadership position, you're an assistant platoon commander. You do that one time. Then you're a platoon commander. You do that one time. Then you're a task unit commander. You do that one time. Generally, rarely guys do more than one of those. Same thing on the enlisted side. Guy gets to do a leading petty officer, does that one time. Chief petty officer of a platoon chief, does that one time. Senior chief in charge of a task unit, does that one time. You don't get to repeat the jobs. And so basically when you're finally getting good at your job, you're done. And now you got to go get the next job up the chain of command. So for me, it was always, and now looking back and even talking to my SEAL buddies now, like how can we prepare them better so that they know what we had to learn during the job? It's a hard thing to do because a lot of stuff you actually have to learn from experience.
Yeah.
And actually we talked about that at the last muster, that was a big part that we talked about. If you're going to get good at something, you have 2 choices: experience or training. And training is a way to condense experience down and distill it. And that's what was great about when I was running training on the West Coast. We got to really condense that experiential. Right. I mean, guys went through hellacious training, and where we provide total chaos for them that most guys wouldn't experience that kind of chaos in their whole career or in 10 careers, but they would get it and they would get pushed super hard. So that way, when they got out on the battlefield, they were ready for the chaos that was out there because we trained them and we pushed them further and harder during training than we hoped they would get pushed on the battlefield.
Yeah, it's crazy. Even that cover and move, even when they're retreating, it's like it showed like how you got to keep that discipline with that. The discipline. It's kind of like like in an MMA fight or something, and the guy starts getting hit on the inside, and rather than still covering up a little bit while he goes back, he like runs away or turns his back or something like that.
Turn your back
and he'll
and you're
get
done.
cracked. Yes,
Turn your back and you're done. But great book. I definitely recommend it for your reading list.
Yeah, there was that part in there that the guy came up to, I think, reload ammo or something, and the guy's sitting there.
Yeah.
And he's just, so he gets like scolded or whatever, and it turns out he's wounded, right? Like that was an interesting little lesson there. Like you just don't know someone's you can't just start going off on
it's
someone.
Totally true. And I don't know if you remember somebody asked us a question one time about, how do these people that have had everything given to them, I grew up in a tough neighborhood, and it's like, oh, you actually don't know what that person's been through, and we had that whole discussion, and that's the same thing true on a day-to-day basis with every other human being that you're dealing with. You don't know what they're going through, you don't know what triumphs and tragedies they've had in their life, you don't know what just happened to them this morning. So the recommended course of action is you give someone a little bit of slack when you don't know them,
Yeah, you ever seen that Seinfeld when he goes to talk to the girl? Come on, bro. it was pretty much this, but just on Seinfeld. So he goes to talk to this girl. He's like, I gotta talk to that girl. She's hot or whatever. He goes up to her and he's like, hey, hello, excuse me. And her back is kind of turned, He's like, excuse me, hello, like and he starts to get real mad that she's not listening to him. Finally, he walks like more close to her, and she kind of starts to turn around. He's like, "Oh, so now you pay attention. What are you, deaf?" And she's like, "Bingo!" Like signs to him.
Oh,
she is deaf.
Yeah,
But you gotta chill out.
Yeah,
gotta find out about people first before you start
Make sure the regimental sergeant major isn't wounded in both legs before you start dressing him down.
I know, bro. Yeah, man. Hey, man,
that's a good thing. He put that in this book. That's pretty humble.
Yeah.
For him to put this in this book.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep. And that other part where they were all tired and stuff, right? Or they were defeated, essentially.
They were actually. You mean when they were basically broken men?
Yeah, and then they got up and they just started charging, getting nuts.
Default aggressive.
The default aggressive part. That's like in Hawaii, there's big centipedes, and they're like, they're kind of
how big are they? Are they like 8 feet long?
No, they're bigger than like centipedes that I've seen here.
Okay, give me a figure.
Like
6 inches, 12 inches.
Like it's 6 is like a normal big centipede, 6 inches.
And
but they'll get bigger anyway. Compared to that they're little bugs. They're little whatever, and you just step on it. But like when you start messing with it and it starts to get nuts, it's super intimidating. I'm just saying.
What, do they have
it's
teeth?
Just like that. I don't know, but they can chase you out of your room.
You got chased out of your room by a centipede?
Anything even like a wasp, or like with these little things that are way smaller than you, and they just get nuts, and you don't want to mess with it,
So Leif was over my house. This was a while ago, a couple years ago, and there was a lizard in my house, like about a 9-inch lizard, and so my son and Leif are going to try and catch this lizard, and they're being weak, man. They're like, they're like, oh, wait, no, grab it, get a box on it, and all this stuff. So I come in, Mr. Tough Guy.
Yep.
I come in, I go, just grab that thing, you wussies. Reach down to grab this thing. This thing turns its head and bites my thumb. And I screamed like the Jim Carrey, and I flicked my hand. It was absolutely hilarious because I went from being a big tough guy to screaming, and having a lizard bit onto my finger. Drew blood, by the way. This thing drew blood, on my thumb. Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, I was default aggressive, but it didn't work out. The lizard was more default aggressive than I was.
Yeah, see, and that is funny. That's a funny story for a couple of reasons, in my opinion. But that is the exact same concept, though. Where if you would have, like how you said in the book, just kept your head, you smashed that lizard.
If I wanted to catch it alive, I wasn't trying to kill it.
Yeah.
But still, I should have been more aggressive. Like the bite didn't even hurt, right? Yeah. It just shocked me.
It just shocked me that this thing. I'm not ready for all this.
Yeah, I wasn't ready for the gnashing of the teeth.
Getting nuts, man. Yeah, those lizards, we have a lot of those, especially when it gets hot. I'm assuming it's the same kind. There are these, but here's the thing. Growing up on Kauai, there's these things. We call them chameleons, but they're like anole, A-N-O-L-E. That's how you spell it. They turn green or brown or whatever, and they get pretty big. And they're super aggressive. Like when you grab them, that's the red thing comes out of their neck, and they start biting you. And you get them to it when you hold them. After a while, they start to calm down, and I think they just start to get sick and stuff. I don't know, but they calm down. So you can do this thing where basically, if you have a lizard's head, you go like this, and he'll go like that. He'll try to bite you. So what you do is when he calms down, right when you grab him, he's trying to kill you. But when he calms down after 3-4 minutes. You do that, and he'll keep kind of like...
He'll do it less and less and less.
Less and less. He'll always do that, though, but he'll just be a lot less aggressive. And then if you put your finger in his mouth, he'll bite you, and he won't let go. So you got to kind of drag your finger out, and it can cause blood or whatever. But what we do is, and you can see pictures of this, we do that, and we put the lizard on our ears. So the lizard would be...
An earring?
An earring, yeah. Biting your ears, you'd have 2 lizards hanging down. But anyway, the point there being,
fun.
If you can keep your when you grow up with that stuff, like those lizards are not scary, even if they're aggressive. And some of them they get pretty like big and bulky, and they're like, dang, this thing has some power to it. This little lizard, but even here, when I grab them, they're like, oh no, I wouldn't have screamed like you. Well,
I
plenty experience. That's what
that lizard got me, dude. It was awful. It was awful. Well, being prepared, I guess, is what we're talking about. Yes. Being aggressive. Why don't you get default aggressive with letting anybody know if they want to support this podcast, maybe how they could do it.
Also support Jocko's traumatizing experience with lizards.
With lizards.
Yeah, biting his fingers and him screaming. Wait, who was it? Leif and who?
It was Leif and my son.
Yeah. Did they lose respect for you that time? A little bit.
Maybe. Well, it's actually funny because Leif always talks about, me being calm, and that's why he laughed so hard. We were driving one time and we almost got in a car wreck. He was driving actually, and I'll have him tell the story. But we hit mud and we were out in the desert. We were going 65 miles an hour on a back road, back by all these farms, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, something like that. And normally these roads are completely dry. They're in the desert, and we're hauling. And Leif's driving. I think he's driving his truck. Yeah, he was driving his truck. We're hauling, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we see a big 18-wheeler on the side of the road, on the opposite side of the road, but it's a narrow road.
Yeah, yeah.
And as we're hauling, all of a sudden, we hit a water. Water, like probably a couple inches deep of water with mud, because what happened somewhere. Irrigation from all this farmland had broken, and there was this flood, and so we hit this thing, and we're immediately hydroplaning. and Leif is from Texas.
Yeah.
So he's not used to driving in the snow. I grew up driving in the snow in New England. You just deal with it. Everyone's like a rally driver up there.
Yeah, that's all serious.
And so Leif, he's not really used to this, and he starts to oversteer the car, which is really, really bad.
Yeah.
And, I'm sitting there, and we're going 65 miles an hour. He's funny when he tells the story, too, because he's like, we thought we were going to die. He's like, we were definitely going to die.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there in the passenger seat, and I say, don't oversteer. Don't oversteer. No brakes. No brakes. All right, you're good. Because that's the other mistake you can make. If you jam on the brakes, you're going to lock it up, and you're going to slide. You're going to lose control. So just don't oversteer. Don't oversteer. No brakes. No brakes. All right, you're good. So that was not my reaction when I got bit on the thumb by the lizard. Ah! It was hilarious.
Yeah. Dang, bro.
Yeah.
It's all good.